Contra is known for being a really hard game. There's enemies everywhere you look, and one hit means you're dead. Of course, there's some people who are masters of Contra, who can beat the game without even dying. But there's a select group of gamers who can do even better. They can speedrun it. For the past decade, speedrunners have spent thousands of hours trying to beat Contra as fast as humanly possible. You can't slow down, you can't stop for anything. You just have to keep flying forward level after level. This is the story of the gamers who've conquered this record. This is the history of Contra World Records. For many years, the earliest Contra records were thought to be published on Speed Demos Archive, a site where players from around the world uploaded their fastest speedruns for everyone to see. This was pretty much the place to watch speedruns in the mid-2000s, and starting in 2006, the first run of Contra was published there, by a runner known as T-Mont. These early Speed Demos Archive runs were thought to be the earliest Contra world records for many years, but very recently, a run predating the Speed Demos Archive runs was discovered. It was incredible for its time. This run was performed in August 2005. The final time was 10 minutes and 55 seconds, a half minute ahead of the run on Speed Demos Archive from the following year. And the runner was Matt Turk. This is the same Matt Turk who held all 14 records in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out for almost a decade. The guy whose record stood strong despite the combined efforts of some of the greatest players in the world. It turns out, Punch-Out wasn't his only interest. In 2005, right in the middle of his record-setting spree in Punch-Out, he noticed there didn't exist a full speedrun of Contra on the internet. So, he decided to do one himself. And unlike most of his Punch-Out runs, which had no video proof, this one did. This is a recording of a VHS tape that Turk sent over, so it's a little hard to see at times, but we can still see what we need to. He started off in the jungle, the first of the 8 stages in Contra. This strategy was pretty simple here. Run to the right and shoot any enemies in your way, while slowing down as little as possible. That was made a little bit more tricky by the random enemy spawns. Outside of the first few enemies in the stage, most of the other backpack soldiers spawned in random locations. Turk had to stay on his toes to react to where they were and clear the path ahead. He also picked up the spread gun. This is by far the most powerful weapon in the game, as it shoots waves of 5 bullets to obliterate enemies in your way. It definitely helped him a lot on the way to the boss of the stage, where Turk mashed fire and took it down. On to stage 2, also known as Base 1. Base 1 features 5 rooms, each with a blue target you need to take out to move on to the next room. Of course, there's also enemies and bullets Turk had to avoid too, but a big focus was mashing the fire button hard enough to take out the blue targets quickly. You have to repress the B button every time you want to fire another wave of shots, without the use of turbo buttons. So, Turk had to do his best to just keep pressing B over and over and over across the whole entire run. Now, one of the fundamental problems with running Contra is that it has a 10 bullet sprite limit. That means you can only have 2 waves of spread on screen at once, limiting how fast targets in the base stages can be taken out. Turk was occasionally able to get more than 2 waves on screen at once, but he didn't entirely understand how and he couldn't do it consistently. After the 5th room was a boss fight, where 4 targets had to be taken out before the boss appears. Turk jumped up and destroyed them, then moved on to stage 3, the waterfall. This stage is an upward climb to the top, jumping from ledge to ledge with enemies and projectiles spawning around you all the while. He slowed down a bit, and while going across the bridge in the middle of the stage, he picked up invincibility to get through enemies cleanly. Next up was base 2. Turk once again was able to get more than 2 spread shots on the screen at times, but wasn't able to consistently keep it. He moved through the 8 rooms fairly quickly while skillfully dodging all shots that were fired at him. Base 2's boss fight features 2 heads that need to be destroyed. When they're together, they're vulnerable, but they move apart for a few seconds between coming back together. Each time they're together is referred to as a cycle, and Turk managed to get a 5-cycle kill. Stage 5 is the snowfield, which is infamous in speedruns for having extremely random and unforgiving enemy spawns. Turk had to preemptively fire his spread gun all over to prepare for enemies that could pop up nearly anywhere. He lost a lot of runs at this level just from bad luck, so he was lucky to make it through safely. The boss fight was pretty easy, but also pretty random. There's 3 locations it can spawn: on the left, in the middle, or on the right. You essentially just have to guess where it's going to spawn and start firing underneath it. Turk lined up on the right and it spawned there, allowing for a pretty fast kill. Stage 6 is the energy zone. It's filled with lasers that kill you upon contact. Some were activated when Turk got close to them, while others seemed to cycle on a random pattern. He had to wait a lot for them to get out of his way, but was able to get through the stage unscathed. Stage 6's boss fight is pretty tricky, and like the others, the way to beat him is to mash bullets into him. He can randomly jump and shoot projectiles, both of which lose time. He jumped once and shot once for Turk, and then he was on to stage 7, the hangar. The hangar has claws that operate in a similar random pattern to the lasers of Energy Zone. If one drops down and hits you, you're dead. Turk had to wait a little bit for the claws, and he had trouble mashing fast enough to get through the walls, but once again he made it through the stage. Finally, he was on to stage 8, the Aliens Lair. This stage is perhaps the most set in stone of all. The enemies mostly spawn in the same place at the same time, and there's 2 bosses to defeat, the head and the heart. Both are taken out by jumping up and mashing as quickly as you can press the button. Turk made his way through the stage cleanly, and had finished the game without dying in just 10 minutes and 55 seconds. A sub 11-minute run of Contra was simply incredible for 2005. Years after this run, Matt Turk would go on to set some of the most famous world records in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out history. His legacy would be defined by these records, and his name would become a legend among so many speedrunners. But on that amazing day in August 2005, his focus was on playing Contra, and he did it so well that the entire Speed Demos Archive community had some catching up to do. It took until the middle of 2006 until anybody was able to match Turk's run. But that June, well-known speedrunner Freddie Anderson tied it to the second, achieving a 10:55 of his own. This run lost some time over Turk in the early stages. He got a bad boss pattern in the jungle, had a tougher time getting through the targets in base 1, and was a little bit slower in the waterfall. He gained some time back, however, in the base 2 boss fight, saving about 4 seconds by getting a 4-cycle kill instead of Turk's 5-cycle. This up and down pattern of gaining and losing time continued in the second half. He gained about 5 seconds from not having to slow down as much in the energy zone, but got a worse pattern in the hangar and had to hesitate more. In the end, it was enough to tie Turk to the second. And a few months later, a new challenger was able to top both of them with a 10:50, a runner known as Crocdoc. He gained a few seconds in base 1 from fast movement through the rooms and taking out targets quickly, and he hesitated less overall in the waterfall and the snowfield. He lost some time from worse laser patterns in Energy Zone, but gained 5 seconds in hangar from great claw patterns. 10:50 was a great final time, and these types of runs more or less defined early Contra speedrunning. One player would get slightly better luck in one stage, then slightly worse luck in another. It usually got close to evening out by the end, so world records would typically be very small. That's just how Contra speedrunning worked. At least until 2007. See, of those 3 early runners, Matt, Turk, Freddie Anderson, and Crocdoc, one of them had a distinct advantage over the others. A fairly big part of Contra is how fast you can repeatedly press the fire button to take out bosses, walls, and other obstacles. Turk's mashing speed was the slowest of the 3, at about 5 to 6 presses per second. Crocdoc was a bit faster at somewhere between 9 and 10 presses per second. Freddie Anderson's, on the other hand, was estimated to be somewhere around 13 presses per second. That was obviously a huge help. But Anderson was also able to master a technique in the base stages known as spread rhythm. Remember how early runners were able to sometimes get more than 2 waves of spread in the base stages? There's a concrete reason why that happens. When a wave of spread fires, it's an arc of 5 bullets. If you fire 2 waves of spread, that's 10 bullets on the screen. The first of these 10 bullets will leave the screen before the rest do, leaving 9 bullets left. If you then repress the fire button right after that first bullet is gone, the game will allow 1 more bullet to be fired from the gun to get the number of bullets back up to 10. This cycle can then be repeated for the other waves of spread as they continue to fire, allowing for a very steady stream of bullets coming down the center. If you're able to mash in a steady rhythm, this can be maintained indefinitely. It's theoretically possible to have 10 waves of spread on screen at once, all in a steady line, but this is virtually impossible to achieve. 3 or 4 waves is a good start, but quite a bit more is possible with incredible mashing finesse. The normal gun has a 4 bullet sprite limit, but spread rhythm combined with the spread gun's 10 bullet limit can lead to incredibly fast target destruction in the base stages. Add in Anderson's skill and mashing speed, and there was a ton of potential to keep lowering the record just from the base stages alone. So, in May 2007, Freddie Anderson blew the competition out of the water with a 1040, a solid 10 seconds ahead of second place. This run featured a 3-cycle kill on the base 2 boss, as well as some decent spread rhythm in the base stages. With a 1040, Anderson was very clearly the best Contra player in the world. His mashing speed was just too fast, and his expertise at running and gunning outmatched everyone else. He really didn't have to keep going. But as time passed, multiple new strategies were developed. So in early 2008, already 10 seconds ahead of anyone else, Anderson came back, and after a series of improvements, dropped this time for the Speed Demo's archive verifiers. When this run was posted, it was considered to be one of the greatest speedruns ever performed on the site. That encompasses nearly every game on nearly every console ever released. Anderson's 1024 on Contra was one of the best. What made it so good? Well, for one thing, his spread rhythm greatly improved. He was able to get streams of 4 bullets going and occasionally even higher. There were also a plethora of new strategies. He waited a bit longer in stage 3 to pick up invincibility so that he didn't have to slow down as much, a move developed by Fiesel. He got better at dealing with the lasers and claws in stages 6 and 7. It turns out they operate on a global timer from power on. Every 128 frames, their cycle resets and the lasers or claws restart from the beginning of their cycle. So, for instance, if Anderson arrived at the first set of lasers in Energy Zone and the middle laser was the first to fire, he would know that he was at a good point in the global timer and could quickly jump up to the top. If the top or bottom flame fired first, he would pretty much always have to hesitate for longer. In the 1024, he unfortunately got the bottom flame pattern, but got a pretty good global timer in Hangar to make up a bunch of time. And after some intense mashing in Alien's Lair, the 1024 was complete. A masterpiece of a run from start to finish. Freddie Anderson submitted this run to Speed Demo's archive and was finally able to stop running the game for a while. After all, what else is there to do when you hold one of the greatest speedrun world records of all time? Well, you could always beat it by 7 seconds. This was certainly unexpected. There weren't any big new strategies or developments. Freddie Andersen just took a nearly perfect run and shaved 7 seconds off of it. His spread rhythm in the base stages reached new levels of greatness, making the spread gun look more like a constant beam of bullets right into the targets. He got the middle flame and energy zone, meaning the best pattern possible. The boss jumped once, but Andersen was just pounding bullets into him to take it down. The claw patterns in the hangar allowed him to barely have to hesitate at all. It was brilliant. Nobody even wanted to try to beat it. And so, Freddie Andersen's 1017 stood as the record, with no rivals, throughout the rest of 2008 and into the next year. It seemed like it was going to be a record that stood for years. But, unexpectedly, in 2009, somebody else started playing Contra again. Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Turk was back. His personal best may have been far off the record at 10:55, but in 2009, Turk came back to try to lower his time. It had been 4 years since his last attempts, so he started off by doing practice attempts without even recording, but on just his second day of doing runs. Matt Turk was clearly a god gamer. If it only took him a couple of days to get 2 seconds off of Freddie's insane record, there was no telling what he could do with a bit more time. So, he kept playing even harder than before. The record was inevitable. After several weeks of attempts, Turk still hadn't quite gotten there. But that was okay. His 1019 happened so quickly that he still had some time to keep trying. Andersen's run was ridiculous, but there were little things he could do better. Andersen had missed a jump in hangar that cost him a bit over a second, and the stage 6 boss had jumped once. So a time around 10:15 was at least possible, but clearly was going to take time to achieve. All he could do was keep pushing. At last, in December 2009, Matt Turk submitted a video to Twin Galaxies, which at the time was one of the main places to submit speedruns. When converting the run to the same timing method that Speed Demo's archive used, the final time was 10:41. That's 22 seconds slower than his alleged 10:19 from several months prior. It's unclear exactly why Turk wasn't able to get closer to the record after his initial attempts. There was definitely a combination of some bad luck and unfortunate mistakes, but it just goes to show how difficult it was to get a time under 10:20. Matt Turk may have had the record back in 2005, but by 2009, he just wasn't able to keep up with Freddie Andersen. But Turk wasn't the only one who couldn't keep up. For the rest of 2009 and 2010, Andersen's 1017 stayed on top as the world record. Other than the push by Matt Turk, he had no rivals trying for it. But in 2011, a player on the Speed Demo's archive forum made a post explaining all of the little things a player could do to improve Freddie Andersen's 1017. He said that he was going to embark on a quest to beat it, and his name was Hydrage. To pull this off, Hydrage was going to need both new strategies and improvements on the slowdowns from Andersen's run. As far as the slowdowns go, there was the aforementioned missed jump in hangar and the boss jump in energy zone. But Hydrage also pointed out that the boss fight in base 1 was a bit slow. He missed some of his shots on the first target, causing the boss to appear about a second later than normal. There were other smaller things too. He lost a half second from needing to weave around bullets against the stage 1 boss. His positioning could have been better for the stage 5 boss. Hydrage mentioned that you lose 1 frame from every extra jump that you do, and across the whole run, Anderson did several extra jumps. He also had one fairly big new strategy. He would skip picking up invincibility in Energy Zone and jump straight across over this gap. Since he wouldn't have to go down and get invincibility, it would save 2 to 3 seconds. This new strategy, combined with all the potential improvements from before, meant Hydrage had a real shot at doing this. But getting enough of the improvements to save time, combined with playing as well as Anderson did elsewhere, would prove to be nearly impossible. Months passed, and Hydrage wasn't able to beat it. But then, in July 2012, after Hydrage had stopped playing for a while, a Contra player known as Mr. K came along with a breakthrough. That boss fight in Base 2 with the multiple heads that move apart, remember how they're only vulnerable when the heads are together? It turns out, if you hit them on the frame before they start moving, they stay vulnerable, allowing the heads to take damage while moving apart. Successfully hitting the head on this 60th of a second window means they can potentially be destroyed in just 2 cycles, saving about 4 seconds over Anderson's 3 cycle. So now, Hydrage had a few more seconds to work with. If there was any time to pull off this run, it was gonna be now. Hydrage got back to the grind, and this time he wasn't stopping until he beat it. It was time for this 4-year-old record's reign to end. In September 2012, Hydrage posted a time. It was 10:16, beating Anderson by 1 second. Instead of celebrating having beaten a 4-year-old record, however, Hydrage dwelled on the places he lost time. His base stages had fairly poor spread rhythm compared to Anderson, despite his improvements on both of the bosses. He got the bottom flame pattern in Energy Zone, meaning he had to slow down, and he hesitated a long time on some of the later flames too. There were also reports from Freddie Anderson himself that he had achieved a 10:16 of his own, although he apparently wasn't proud of this run and never released video of it. So, Hydrage wasn't done yet. He may have beaten the 10:17, but he knew it could go lower. But what happened on September 30th, 2012 blew expectations out of the water.
I'll settle for a 12. I will settle for a 12. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I will settle for a 12 and I will submit.
Hydrage had just completed an incredibly strong run. He had saved 4 seconds from better spread rhythm in the base stages, on top of nailing the 2-cycle kill on the base 2 boss. His global timer patterns were great, getting the middle flame in Energy Zone and little hesitation needed in Hangar. But he also knew he had lost some time, mainly from missing the jump to skip invincibility in Energy Zone, so he was really hoping the final time of this run would be 10:12. If it was a 10:13, he had decided he would keep doing attempts to go lower. So, he retimed his run via a frame count, begging that the final time would say 10:12.
Come on! Come on! Yes! Yes! Oh yes! I'm done with this game! I'm fucking done with this game! Oh my gosh! Oh hell yeah! Oh god, I got it! Oh.
For the first time in 5 years, someone other than Freddie Anderson was the Contra record holder. Hydrage's 10:11 would stand as the record well into 2013, when players once again began looking into finding new strategies to go even faster. The run was starting to get close to the 10-minute mark. Getting under 10 minutes wasn't realistic, but getting closer to it began to seem more possible. But toward the end of 2013, a new competitor began to rise. Today, he's known for his Cuphead speedruns and for having beaten every NES game ever released. But in 2013, he was a fairly small speedrunner just trying to get some records. This is the Mexican Runner, better known as TMR. By October 2013, while playing on emulator, TMR had lowered his personal best down to right behind Hydrage's world record. And thanks to some new strategies in Hangar, he knew he could save the few seconds he needed to get the record. The biggest was found by Dusseler and TMR. If you pick up invincibility and take the bottom path, you can then go straight through the claws without stopping, saving about 2 seconds. So he began doing some attempts to beat Hydrage. And on October 7th, 2013, he had a good run going into base 2 with great spread rhythm. Unfortunately, he missed the 2-cycle kill on the boss, which made TMR a little angry.
¡Hijo de tu puta madre, of course, you fucker de mierda! Vete a la verga, puto!
However, he would ultimately pick this time back up in the later stages. He successfully made the jump in Energy Zone where Hydrage fell, then executed the new route through Hangar. In the end, it was enough to get a 10-11. It beat Hydrage's recording by 1/10 of a second, but when adjusted to the same frame rate as his, it was actually slower by just a fraction of a second. TMR would go on to beat this time twice more that same week, officially taking the record and lowering it to 10:10. These times were all performed on an emulator, but by November 2013, he made the switch to playing Contra on a real NES. He saw results almost immediately, getting a 10:10 on console after just a couple hundred attempts. But he wasn't satisfied yet, so throughout the next couple of months, he kept doing attempts to lower the record closer to 10 minutes. On December 2nd, 2013, TMR had a run going that was about even going into base 2. After some good spread rhythm and a 2-cycle kill on the boss, he knew he was on a really good pace. He got the good boss spawn in Snowfield, then was on to the Energy Zone, where he unfortunately got the bottom flame pattern and 2 jumps from the boss. Still, because his 10:10 got an even worse global timer, he picked up about 1.5 seconds. The Hangar was excellent. He got a great global timer and executed the invincibility route well. Going into the last stage, he knew all he needed to do was not mess up, and he would have a big new world record.
¡A huevo, puta madre! This... That's it, man, that's it. Goodbye, fucking Contra. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.
This was pretty huge. Congratulatory messages poured in from across the community. He had played for 9 hours straight, only to get this incredible record at the very end. A fitting reward. And in the description of the video was this sentence: "Enjoy the run, because this time might stay for a while."
Yes! World record! Ah! Ah! World record, man! World record! In your fucking face! With YOLO dead at the end, man.
Well, that was unexpected. A 10:05. This run had a very clean opening with some good spread rhythm, and was even with the record through stage 4. The difference between this run and the 10:08 came from an even better Energy Zone and Hangar. TMR got the ideal middle flame pattern, with just 1 jump on the boss, and flew through the Hangar even faster than before. This run pretty much cemented it. TMR was the king of Contra. He had set the last several records in a row, and nobody was showing any signs of making a push to beat him. He was on top of the world. But there was one other top level player. His name was DK28. He didn't have a super fast time, but that's partially because he had focused on other categories, like the Japanese version, which skipped cutscenes and allowed for an overall lower time. In January 2014, he started focusing his attempts on any percent, where TMR had just recently achieved his 10.05. But it quickly became clear that DK28 had one very distinct advantage over TMR. See, as the record became more optimized, the quality of the player's spread rhythm in the base stages was becoming more and more important. There's two main components to how good your spread rhythm is: how fast you can mash, and how well you can mash in a rhythm. On screen is the estimated mashing speed of the last two Contra record holders, measured in presses per second. You can see that Hydrage's mashing speed was significantly faster than TMR's. However, Hydrage struggled to maintain a consistent spread rhythm. He had the tendency to overmash, and often lost the rhythm after getting a good start. TMR, on the other hand, was quite good at getting and maintaining a good rhythm, but his mashing speed limited how many waves of bullets he could get on screen. The ideal Contra masher was somebody who had the mashing speed of Hydrage with the rhythm of TMR. Enter DK28. DK's mashing rhythm was excellent. Once he got a rhythm going, he was pretty much always able to maintain it and keep it strong. But his mashing speed wasn't as good as Hydrage's. It was even better. This was the magic combination for amazing spread rhythm, which gave him a big advantage. Folks, we're about to enter the reign of DK28.
We got it. 10:04. Yes!
2 weeks after TMR's legendary 10.05, DK beat it with a 10.04. The way he did it was by saving 3 full seconds in base 2. His spread rhythm was amazing enough to save that much time in one stage alone. But he wasn't done yet. A month later, he got a 10.02 with a cleaner boss fight in base 1 and less hesitation in Hangar. It was quite clear at this point that DK's skillset would be the future of Contra speedruns. Incredible spread rhythm combined with precision elsewhere. He had a 3-second lead over anyone else in the world, so he took a break from Contra in mid-2014. But after 4 months, DK saw just how close he was to breaking the 10-minute barrier. Ever since Turk's 10.55 from 2005, every single Contra record had begun with a 10. When looking at his splits, he knew he could make it start with a 9. He could save 4 seconds in energy zone since he got a really bad global timer in the 10.02 and a slow boss fight. There was also a bit he could save on the boss fight in base 1, and potential for a little bit of time save from tighter jumping in the waterfall. The potential for a time in the 950s was more real than ever. If anyone could do it, it was DK. In July 2014, he got back on his quest, trying to get the first ever sub 10 in Contra.
PB. PB. We got a 10:01. We got a 10:01. Oh, we finally broke the wall. We finally broke the wall. Done. No spiders. Take your immortality, Bill. Holy shit!
This was DK28's self-proclaimed holy grail. It was a 9:58 that smashed the 10-minute barrier. The community celebrated, and DK was simply overjoyed. His only significant time losses were from unoptimal jumping in the waterfall, and getting some lag in the energy zone from a sprite overload. That was really about it. His spread rhythm was once again excellent, He got the 2-cycle kill, he got the middle flame pattern, 0 jumps from the boss, and virtually no hesitation in hangar. Echoing Freddie Anderson's 1017 from years prior, this run was called one of the greatest speedruns ever performed. And so, it stood unrivaled.
Alright, so far so good. This is a better run through. That was weird. What just happened? What just happened? Tell me you guys saw that. What? I just skipped half of stage 1. Holy crap.
On December 15th, 2014, DK was doing some Contra attempts when the level end theme played and he walked off of a ledge. When he respawned, he was suddenly in stage 2. He had just skipped the second half of the jungle, and he had absolutely no idea how. This opened all sorts of doors. If this could be used consistently, and levels could be ended early, minutes could come off of the run. Contra speedruns would completely change. Now, all they had to do was figure out how it worked. So, the community began a huge search effort. People broke down the code of the game to determine exactly what the cause was, and how it could be replicated. A guy named Alyosha was leading the search, and he broke down his quest every step of the way, documenting exactly what he was looking at. The community was following him with every update he posted, anticipating the discovery that would change Contra speedrunning forever. Finally, 3 months later, he posted his findings. He couldn't figure out what caused it. After searching everywhere he could, Alyosha couldn't find any way for a player to trigger anything to end the level early. His conclusion was that it was most likely a random hardware error, meaning it wouldn't be reproducible on command. To this day, it's unknown what caused this glitch, although there have been reports of a level end glitch happening to other players too. If it ever gets figured out, Contra speedrunning as we know will be revolutionized, and its discoverer will forever go down in speedrunning history. Even without this glitch, by May 2015, DK was wanting to go back to any percent. He was reliably able to save a second in stage 3 from better jumping and a better boss kill, and without the lag in energy zone, he could save over a second there as well. So, he decided his goal would be to take the record down 2 more seconds to a 9:56. And on May 21st, he got halfway there.
Done. Oh, baby!
Later that same day, DK would get some more ammunition to help him out. Speedrunner Zallard1 found a new strat in the waterfall that could save about a second. The objective of the waterfall is simply to jump to the top as fast as possible, but the height of each jump actually varies slightly. Sometimes you would get a higher jump that allowed you to skip some platforms, but for years it was thought to be random when this occurred. Mr. K later determined that your jump height can be somewhat predictable. If you take the same moves up every time, and hold each right-facing jump for their full duration, you can ensure that your jump heights will be the same each time you play the waterfall. So, Zallard figured out a new route to the top that could be taken every time that had 2 built-in higher jumps at strategic points to skip a couple of ledges. This allowed the waterfall to be both really consistent and about a second faster than before. Thanks to this extra second, and some potential time save in Base 2 and Snowfield, DK got paces going quite a bit ahead of 9:57. However, something always tragically went wrong.
Fucking asshole. Game over. That's it. Oh my god. Those spawns despawned my fucking minecart. We just lost record because of spawning.
And then, on June 1st, 2015, he got on this run. Unbelievably, DK was on 9:53 pace. There was no way this could last. Something had to go wrong. But as Energy Zone started, he got the middle flame pattern, the perfect global timer. This was it. This was actually happening. DK was on his way to smash his own world record.
No!
Or maybe not. 953 was just a little bit too unrealistic. But in the meantime, there were still more records that DK knew he could get. A week later, he took the record down to a 955, thanks to some big time saves in the waterfall and base 2, but Energy Zone had some lag and a slower boss fight. He just knew that there was a little more he could do. Every run had time losses somewhere, even if they were small. Because of his mashing skill, he had the potential to get times that nobody else in the world could get. The question was, how low was that potential? Well, he was on 953 pace once. Maybe he could do it again.
Oh baby! 953! 953!
This run got a fast boss kill in base 1. This run got the new waterfall route. This run got the 2-cycle kill in base 2. This run got the best boss spawn in Snowfield. This run got the middle flame pattern in Energy Zone. And this run had the perfect global timer in Hangar. DK called it his masterpiece, and it really was. It was the result of months of grinding and a skill set that nobody else possessed. A couple months after this run, DK stopped speedrunning, and at this point he hasn't done Contra attempts in over 5 years. But what he did to the game won't be forgotten. He had the skills to do things that nobody else could, and used them to grind for times way ahead of anybody else. And since he was so far ahead, his 953 sat on top of the leaderboard for years. But in 2017, someone new started making a push up the board. His name was Angry Lynx, and in January 2017, he became just the 4th person in the world to get a sub 10. A month later, he was in 2nd place and quickly closing in on DK's world record, and as the months went on, he got even closer. As you would expect, Angry Lynx's mashing couldn't quite keep up with DK's. It was around 12 presses per second, but he was still quite good at keeping it in a rhythm. He didn't have much in the way of new strategies either. There was a new route in the waterfall developed by Chambers to make a jump over a flame on the bridge much easier, and some new ways of shooting in base 2 to speed up a couple of the rooms. But beyond that, there wasn't a lot that he could do to improve over DK. Take this run on July 29th, 2017. Even with his new strategies, he lost 0.9 in base 1, 0.7 in the waterfall, and 1.7 in base 2, putting him at 3.3 seconds behind the record halfway through the game. He just couldn't keep up with DK's mashing, and it made paces like this all too common. This run seemed like a lost cause, but believe it or not, it wasn't. Despite over 3 seconds of deficit, there was still theoretically a way Angry Lynx could pull this back. As he moved into the snowfield, he committed to going for an incredibly risky jump that TMR popularized, the YOLO jump. There's a section toward the start of the stage where the grenades being thrown are just too close for comfort, so speedrunners usually briefly hesitate for it. But it's technically possible to make it over them without hesitating if you execute a frame-perfect jump. 1/60th of a second too late or too early, and you hit the grenades and die. Lynx went for the YOLO jump and timed it right, so he saved 1/5 of a second. He had about a second to save in Energy Zone from DK's slowdowns, like the slight lag and the jump from the boss. But 1 second wasn't enough for this run, so Lynx decided to go for another incredibly risky strategy, a trick nicknamed the Leap of Faith. This particular flame isn't tied to a global timer, and it randomly fires out. Players usually sidestep it by taking the top route, which is slow because of the need to dodge this flame and jump down afterwards. However, it's possible to just go for the jump and hope the flame doesn't fire. You only have about a 5% chance of not dying, but it saves a second over the top route. Angry Lynx decided he had to go for it and pray he didn't die.
Oh! Sick! No fucking way!
He also got a good global timer and 0 jumps from the boss. Incredibly, he saved more than 2 seconds over the world record. In Hangar, he saved just over half a second from dealing with the final set of claws better. DK had pause buffered, while Lynx simply jumped over the claw. Miraculously, Lynx was less than half a second behind the record going into Alien's Lair. There were a few tenths of a second he could technically save there from better mashing into the head, so he had a slim chance at this. It was gonna be close.
Oh, are you serious? Did I split early? Oh my god.
This run would be retimed to a 953.80, a new world record by 3/100ths of a second. For the first time in 3.5 years, someone was faster at Contra than DK28. But Angry Lynx wasn't done yet, because just a few days after his record, the biggest development in years was made. This is the one-cycle kill. Back in 2013, when Mr. K posted his findings on 2-cycling the base 2 boss, he pointed out that a 1-cycle kill was theoretically possible too. By doing the vulnerability glitch on both heads instead of just one, they can both be taken out while moving apart. However, his setup involved wasting time to destroy the top target, which normally wasn't taken out, and was noted for being incredibly precise. The general consensus was that it wasn't worth doing for a small time save. However, in July 2017, speedrunner Dexter came along with a brand new setup that didn't involve taking out the top target. You had the fire in the center, have a bullet hit both heads on the exact frame before they start moving, then move to the right in a precise spot and fire them down. It was still incredibly difficult, but it was doable, and it saved 2.5 seconds over the 2-cycle kill. So, with an extra chunk of time to save, Lynx had no choice but to keep going. And on August 25th, he had a run that saved nearly 5 seconds in base 2, half from the 1-cycle kill and half from really good spread rhythm. However, he bled time pretty badly in the back half, losing almost 4.5 seconds from no leap of faith or YOLO jump, a worse energy zone boss pattern, and a slower claw pattern in Hangar. But he was just able to keep it together in Alien's Lair for a modest world record. So now he had 2 incredible halves. If you take the first half of his second record and add it to the second half of his first record, it comes out to a 9:48. That wasn't a realistic time to achieve, but getting closer to it certainly was. So, throughout much of 2018, Lynx grinded Contra to clean up the run and push it even lower.
I split late. It's definitely a new world record. Sweet. Yo, this might be a 952. Fuck yes, dude. Fuck yes. Yes! Fuck yes! Yes, dude! Fuck yes, dude! Holy shit! Oh my god, dude, yes! Oh, what a run!
950.55 is where the record stands today. Aside from not going for the super risky jumps in Snowfield and Energy Zone, and a couple of imperfect global timers, this run had practically everything that Lynx could have gotten. That being said, sub 950 is pretty much inevitable, but who's gonna get there, and how? To this day, Angry Lynx has been doing lots of Contra attempts to try to get the coveted 949. It's getting really tough to save time though. There's about a second that can be saved from better global timers, but beyond that, he needs to go for super risky moves like the Leap of Faith. And he definitely can do it. His consistency is incredible, and Lynx stringing together a nearly perfect run is certainly feasible. However, the potential for this record is even lower. If you take someone with the mashing level of DK28 and give them all of the knowledge of strategies of today, getting a time in the mid 940s can't be ruled out. His 16 presses per second and incredible rhythm abilities are so important, and they can save enough time in the base stages to take the record a couple seconds lower. But still, beating Angry Lynx's record is going to be incredibly hard regardless of who's playing. Will DK ever come back to try for the sub 950? Will a new player rise up to the challenge? Or will the reign of Angry Lynx continue on? We'll just have to wait and see. Thanks for watching.